Good evening, Paul.
Hi, Mario.
I think this is highly appropriate. This is highly appropriate based on what happened. I think a lot of Bills fans want to hide their face. No?
Man, I don't even know where to start. I'm gonna start with the obvious question. You've seen V for Vendetta, right?
Of course.
I feel like that's really a no. Like that question was rhetorical. Have you
Yes.
ever seen V for Vendetta?
I've seen pieces, bits and pieces of it. Yes.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. Um, can we just talk Buffalo Bills, please?
Let's do
Can we
that. All
just
right.
talk the Bills?
You take it away while I get ready.
Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to start. So, hello everybody. Welcome to the show. Mario and I are going to be talking Bills versus the Redskins. Kind of give you that little bit of a preview and kind of wrap up everything that was from last week. I can't even look at you. Um,
You sound like my wife.
yeah, yeah, fact.
Okay,
Uh,
so yeah, it was kind of it was kind of a slap in the face Sunday calling the game and doing post game a lot of things. It was the cannibalization of our fan base going Allen versus Dable.
Yeah, a lot of angry folks, which again is totally justifiable, right? When you start laying it out. If you want to think that this is Josh Allen's fault, there's enough evidence to prove that. If you want to think this is Brian Dable's fault, there's enough evidence to prove that. If you want to say that Sean McDermott does not know anything about offense and he can't control it and the ship is sinking, I mean, there's enough evidence to see it that way too. So this is really a pick your poison scenario. If you want to be pessimistic about the Bills, there's enough to be pessimistic about to pick an argument. Some people aren't going to subscribe to that. Some people are going to say, listen, it's just a little blip on the radar. Everything's going fine. They won 5 games. They're only 5-2. Like, don't you think you're jumping off? And again, there's enough evidence to support that argument as well. So this is very much there's a lot of stuff out there to justify however you're right to feel that day.
Yeah, and it's pretty funny, Paul, because I've been having 3 kids. You know, having kids, it's not very easy just to hop in the film room and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go and study film for an hour or two or something like that."
Right.
So, I've been
Right.
doing bits and pieces ever since the video was released on Tuesday. So, it's I see a lot of things that we saw during the broadcast firsthand. So a lot of Allen's decision making, a lot of some of the calls, and the more I kept going through the tape, camera don't lie, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things where they just got out coached. I mean, when you break
Yeah.
it down to brass tacks, if you want to go through Dable, Allen, all the other stuff, the defense having some breakdowns here and there, they just got out coached, and that
Mm-hmm.
was the bottom line of it because we had mentioned on the broadcast if you come in and in the second play of the second half they go 65 yards for a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
True, there were some breakdowns in the play itself. I understand that. However, they just the game plan coming in. I think on both sides of the ball, it just seemed that the Eagles were much better prepared than the Buffalo Bills this week. And as we stated prior to the game, um, the Eagles have been a very Jekyll and Hyde team this year. I mean, you're 4-4. You don't beat the Packers and lose to the Falcons in the same year unless you're a wishy-washy team. But they still have a very strong coaching staff. They have a very strong infrastructure. They have talent on their team. So they're one of the teams that had one of the strongest offensive and defensive lines coming into the season. I know some of those guys have been banged up, but majority of the horses played on Sunday. So the Buffalo Bills were able to see um, what they were when they're rocking on all cylinders. So notice I didn't say anything about the weather of the game, although it could have affected a few play calls here and there. But the Eagles were playing in it too. So what are you going to say? You know.
Right. Right. And I think it's fair to start kind of looking at things. I see Grendel mentions that you saw the Eagles run on the Buffalo Bills, and you saw Miami run on the Buffalo Bills. And it kind of felt, and I don't know about you, Mar, but I kind of started to have flashbacks to 2018 where we were doing post games talking about how you can't run on the interior of the Bills. You're never going to go anywhere on the interior of the Bills. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like the floodgates opened and everybody was able to run on the Bills. After the bye week last year, I don't know what it was, but something about that bye week just made it feel that way. If you go back and you look at the stats from 2018, they gave up some big days, right? So the Bills had in the first, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7. In the first 7 games of the 2018 season, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times allowed a 100-yard rusher or more in total yards on the ground. So, it's again, the sky isn't falling, but again, there's enough evidence that if you want to feel that way, I would understand somebody feeling that way right now. The run defense, the interior of the run defense scared me a little bit. Star Lotulelei played the most snaps that he's played all season. I think he was in almost 60% of the snaps this last Sunday. And, you just got to fix it. That's it. I don't think it's any more simple than that. You just have to fix that run defense without sacrificing the pass defense. Right. It's a fine line, man. And I know that once we start talking about, breaking down film, it is a fine line between minding the run game and minding the pass game. You can't. It's sometimes impossible to do both.
Yeah, a lot of times in the tape that I watch, everyone's going to bag on Star Lotulelei, and that's fine. I mean, it's well deserved. A lot of times in the game, when I was watching it, if he was singled up, he was able to generate some type of pressure. But Wentz was getting the ball out of his hands pretty fast. And the times where he was doubled quite a bit. But what the Bills were doing, when you have 2 linebackers and that's all you have, you're going to have to try to cover a lot of gaps than you would that if you had 3 linebackers. So what the ends were doing, it seems like that both of the ends, whoever, if it was Murphy, Lawson, Hughes, Johnson, whoever was in there, they were taking a very wide angle to get around the tackles. What that does is it creates gaps in and of itself. So what happens was the Eagles were blocking down, and then a tackle was releasing to the second level on the linebacker. So in that respect, it's very tough for Milano and Edmonds, who have been known to get sticky a little bit. I mean, Milano's an undersized linebacker as it is, so he has to have guys that keep bodies off of him for him to be a playmaker. So in that, it was very interesting because, Lotulelei plays a little bit that stunt 4-3, kind of like the old Joe Green did back in the day, where he's tilted his body and he tries to shoot the gap. Well, what the Eagles were doing to circumvent that is they were just blocking him down and washing him down. So the guard would block him into the center, and then the guard would go second level on Edmonds or Milano. And especially on the touchdown run, that's exactly what happened. Hughes took a very wide angle. Starr got blocked down, and there was a huge gap for the running back to lead. He had a lead blocker too. And the other thing that was the defensive breakdown for the Buffalo Bills was that Milano didn't spill it out to Hyde. He tried taking the blocker, and Sanders just ran inside of him, and Hyde had nowhere. He couldn't get him. So it's an understanding of the defense. It's an understanding of what you're trying to do. And the Bills just kind of fell flat a little bit on Sunday. And, I messaged, I put it on Twitter yesterday when I was breaking down the film. I just was able to get through the first half yesterday. And I tell you what, it was a blessing. They were only down 4 points with a lot of the defensive breakdowns and offensive breakdowns that were going on with the game. But the second half adjustments, where the Eagles have been very strong, that they came out and they just all right, we're taking this game over. We're done. Right. So, and they ended up scoring. They're going 20-7 in the second half against the Bills. So, there was pressure in Allen's face quite a bit, and there were times where there wasn't any pressure, and he let the ball go a little too early. So, we can get into all that stuff.
You have to just accept the learning process, right? Because again, this is a second-year quarterback. But he is in the second year with this offensive coordinator, right? I think that's kind of an underplayed dynamic, is that, sure, you have a young quarterback, but talk to me about your quarterback and offensive coordinator relationship, right? I think that's really, really important. And right now the Bills are on pace, and the Bills have scored on average 3 more points than they did last year, and you completely remade the offense. I think there's an argument to be made of, is that good enough? I mean, I can't imagine another team being able to rebuild an entire offense and then still be, competitive, just competitive, not even winning games, just be competitive. You don't normally rebuild an entire offense in the offseason. That's what the Bills have done. And, you're going to have your hits, you're going to have your misses. And we can look at some of the injuries right now for Buffalo, because Cody Ford is right now, I think he was limited with an elbow today. Tynaseki got a veteran rest day. So I think they're probably, kind of looking at Tynaseki probably starting this week, because Ford was limited with an elbow. So they gave him the day off. Gave him the day off today. Maurice Alexander's out with a knee. Lorenzo Alexander's on a rest day. Kirk Coleman's out with a rest day. But you know what you're hearing? Defense. Cody Ford is the only player who is limited because of any sort of injury. So it's finally time for this offense to start getting off the ground. Everyone's healthy according to the injury report. So the excuses are being limited now. And it's going to be put up or shut up time sooner rather than later, because you're going to walk into a thicker part of the schedule, a harder part of the schedule. You got to start putting up points. And everybody knows that. Even Sean McDermott said we got to get back to basics. And his team was out there doing like tackling drills. Like they were doing basic stuff. Like, this is how you don't line up offsides. Like basic football. Yeah. Because Mark, when you and I were doing the play-by-play, we were screaming at the TV, "You're offsides. You're offsides. Get back. Get back. You're offsides." Flag City, man. It's been undisciplined football. And that's problematic. You can't have undisciplined football. And that starts from the top down. So I'm glad that they're holding the players accountable, but I mean, you can't have undisciplined football in the NFL and expect to win football games. You just can't.
No, and I don't want this to be too down of a episode when we talk about. Sure. They are still 5-2. They did lose to an NFC team, which benefits them. If you're going to lose games, we've talked about it many times. You're going to lose the NFC ones, because those are the ones that are more. I mean, you can't lose your conference games. They've dropped one just to a division rival and an AFC team in the Patriots. But, and this is probably the only time I'll ever say this, I think we're done with Lee Smith. I think it's that train's. I think that train's done. Because I saw in the tape, I saw Croft do the things that they were asking Lee Smith to do. And I really think Lee Smith, as far as from a blocking perspective, tight end, he had a couple holding calls. He had a false start when they were in goal to go. So, in that respect, I think Lee Smith was there trying to keep the seat warm for Croft until he got healthy. Now you got Knox there, who could be your primary tight end in a receiving game. But a lot of times he was just running clearing routes throughout the game for Beasley or Brown to come underneath. And I mean, from my perspective, I'm about at my wit's end with Lee Smith. And it's not, Paul, it's not me to talk about a player in that respect. I just think that Croft is that guy for you, because, I mean, if Lee Smith was doing something that no one else could do, I can understand that, but he's not. Croft can do what he does.
Yeah, he's an extra offensive lineman, right? Really what Lee Smith has been there to do is just kind of protect those tackle positions, because truth be told, it's kind of a weaker position on the offensive line. If you're looking across the offensive line, you kind of want to reinforce that tackle position, give him a little help, give Josh the time he needs. But again, you start losing the numbers game, right, when you put Lee Smith out there. That's why, Josh Allen's first completion, I think, was to Lee Smith over the middle for 5 yards. You're like, okay, well, that's all he'll do today. You're like, all right, we got that one out of the way early. I'm glad that was part of the script. Good job.
Yeah, there was, and they ran that play they ran that play later in the game with Croft, right. And Allen ended up having to run it for 5 yards. I believe that was on the touchdown drive to Beasley. So they ran that play quite a bit. It's a very simple concept what they have on that play. But go ahead.
I want to something in the comment section. Steve Lynn says we should take a page out of the 49ers offensive playbook. They have similar people they have similar personnel on offense, but they are really creative in the run scheme. It opens up more creative play action with an athletic QB and no number one wide receiver. I think it's a very stark difference. We talked about this on another episode before between an offensive minded head coach and a defensive-minded head coach,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think this is part of the difference.
Well,
They stress and value different things, and you just have to know that coming into it.
when you have an offensive head coach, all right, the defense is there just not to let in 35 points.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically, in my perspective. I'm not saying this is anybody but me. From my own perspective, when you have an offensive minded head coach, you're just saying, listen, just don't get drug up and down the field. Just don't do that. Just don't get, just don't do that. And it seems like the offense and an offensive minded coach, he can be independent of the defense. He can just call his plays, score points, move the ball, control the clock, and do all those things himself. And we're talking about Shanahan, a guy who coached it was offensive coordinator of a team that went to the Super Bowl. And so let's not. Very stark differences between him and Dable in that respect as far as calling plays.
Right.
When you have a defensive head coach, now the offense and defense have to be in lockstep for the defense's philosophy. It seems like if you have a defensive head coach, no matter how you win, it's going to look ugly because that's how they want it. They want to run the ball. They want to control the clock. They want to keep the score low. It's an ugly, ugly game. So you have Brian Dable in there, who's bringing over a system that the Patriots mastered, which is dink and dunk, very boring football, which is probably why he is where he is. You know what? McDermott doesn't want him to do anything too flashy. He doesn't want him, because if you go out there and you score, I know this is going to sound silly, but if you go out there and you score in a minute and a half, then your defense is on the field for quite a bit. You have to have long sustaining drives to give your defense a rest because in the construct of the offense and defense on those teams, that's what you have to have. And it just seems in that respect, if you tried to compare Dable to Shanahan, didn't 49ers throw up 51 points? And I don't even think Garoppolo had over 200 yards passing.
Yeah, I think it was $171.
Yeah. So how do you – but their front seven is all first rounders.
They've been stocking up those first round picks for a while.
They've been like the NFC version of the Jacksonville Jaguars in that respect. So
they fleeced the Bears for Trubisky, right? So what a great job John Lynch has done with that organization. But again, he's been very savvy at the draft. I think Bean has been very savvy with the draft as well. I can't say that I'm even frustrated the Bills didn't pick anybody up at the trade deadline.
This is an interesting point.
Not frustrated by that.
That's an interesting point. I just want to get to a couple of comments in the comment section. It says Grendel comes in. He said they've handcuffed Josh, and there was another comment. He said Dable isn't letting Josh use his cannon. I think from my perspective of what Allen is doing, I think he's thinking too much out there. He's not letting his natural athleticism play out. I think he's trying to think too much. It could be that Dable's not calling those plays. A lot of the routes that they have are very long developing routes, right? And sometimes guys just simply aren't open. And Allen has to trust that his team, wherever his receivers are, can make a play for him. They don't have to always be schemed completely wide open for them to catch a pass. And these guys can make some plays. So in that respect, I understand how that could be frustrating. But looking at what I've seen on film over the last 3-4 weeks, there are guys that are open that Allen misses. That's on Allen. Guys that aren't completely wide open, he's failing to pull the trigger on those guys. On the long play to Foster right before the half, John Brown was wide open off the line.
Oh, yeah.
Allen looked right at him. He didn't even throw it.
Nope.
Didn't even throw it. And the safety ran over to Foster immediately.
Oh yeah, there was no doubt. When Foster was on the field, he might as well just run out there with a white flag, saying, "Hey guys, I'm about to run a 9." It was no doubt. It was a no doubter. Like Foster's on the field, hasn't been active. We know this guy's pretty fast. I bet you he's going to run a go route, and he did. I think it was his first or second snap of the day.
He only played 8.
Yeah, they did not telegraph that at all. Right? Great job. And I guess that's kind of one of the concerns that I have is, setting stuff up. But Josh has done the things that people have asked him to do. Right. And I think a lot of that comes in the fact that he's trying to slow the game down for himself. But you see some of those old habits start to creep back up that, in the pre-draft process, you're a little worried about. right? We talked about it, and you sent me a text message of we talk about Josh Allen's base because it keeps getting wider and wider, right? So
Yeah.
as he buys more time in the pocket, he actually gets shorter and shorter because he keeps, his base, his feet keep getting further and further spread apart. And you sent me one. It looked like he was almost in a full split, and he hadn't even cocked back to throw the ball yet. Oh
Yeah,
my God.
that almost started a little argument in the on the community tab between a couple of the hashtag Nation members too. It was
Really?
interesting. Yeah, because someone's I
Did you
think
post that picture on the community tab?
I did,
I didn't see that
but
at all.
I touted you in it because that's what
Oh,
you said during the
hey.
broadcast, and
Oh,
someone,
yeah.
I think it was Jack, no, it wasn't John Patrick. I can't remember which Patrick it was. Said that, well, I saw this on cover one, and then Bill's fan came to your aid and said, well, Paul said that a day beforehand. Like I don't watch,
There we go, guys. There we
I
go.
don't watch cover one, so
Well, you could
I
see it. You
wouldn't
could see
know.
it during the game. You could just see it during the game. That
Mm-hmm.
base is gets wider and wider and
All right,
wider.
going in the community comment section. Steve Lynn, I think a defensive-minded head coach would be happy running the ball on average 30 times a game and ball control
Right.
with play action. The last 49ers game was all creative runs, play action, awesome. Jadon Crawford, he says, do we need to run more? The Patriots seem to have evolved into more of a running offense the last couple of years. I feel like Dable is living in the past Patriots offense. No, it could be that when you come up to the line, Allen has two options. He has not really a run, like an RPO, but he has two plays that he could call. We saw it in the Jet game the first week when they gave him the keys to the car. He ended up throwing 18 straight passes. That the offense, that the EP system is predicated on taking whatever the defense will give you. If they give you a gap, you look for numbers. That's where you go. If they're giving you they play a certain coverage that's tailored toward your route concepts, then you go there. A lot of things that are on Allen's plate, but the one thing that is not on Allen's plate is the line shifts and the line protections. So they completely took that off of his plate, and there may be some miscommunications going on with the line shifts and the line protections that are going on with the Buffalo Bills, which could cause some of those guys to leak through. But like I said at the beginning of the stream, the Eagles are tough. The Eagles are a tough team, man.
Sure.
They're really really tough.
Yeah.
Would they want to run the ball more? I believe McDermott would want him to run the ball more. I don't know if that's Allen changing it or it's Dable calling it. I'm not sure. We don't have that access, Paul.
I don't really think the Phillies game is a fair barometer of how much they're going to run the ball because the game got away from them so quickly. Like it didn't take long for that game to get away from them. But going into half, they definitely didn't run the football as much as I was anticipating them running the football. When you look at Devin Singletary's line and he's got, 3 rushes, one of which was the last play of the game, like that's a player that you're expecting to see a little bit more from now that we're past the bye week. And that seemed to be a good game to start to get him a little bit involved. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you just didn't really see much of him until the second half when they started trailing, and then Frank Gore comes out of the game because Devin Singletary's in there on pass pros and he's in there. I think he had 6 targets. So, it's 8 targets, 6 receptions on 8 targets. And, that's not the Devin Singletary that I want. I want a Devin Singletary that's involved in first down in the run game. I feel like when Frank Gore is in there, the offense gets predictable. And that's no slight to Frank Gore. It's just it becomes relatively predictable. You're in normally heavier sets. I don't see Frank Gore sitting saddle next to Allen in the shotgun, in a 3 wide set. I don't.
Sometimes it is though, Paul. But here's the thing: I've never seen Gore go backwards.
No.
So
nope.
While he may not be a bell cow at this point in his career, he's still a very effective runner. And whether you're telegraphing it or not, he is. He's still able to run inside the gaps, and the linemen are pretty good. They're starting to mesh well. Minus, like you said, minus the Philly game, they're starting to really mesh well in some of the things that they're doing. So going back to the chat, we got Donnybrook or Kevin Barbado. He said,
"You're so good at this.
Offensive talent is not a problem." I'm serious. I'm going to reach through the screen and get you. I swear to God. Donnybrook, still a few missing pieces. This year's draft is going to be epic. I agree with that. Gore should not be Grendel says Gore should not be a first down option. And we could agree, to disagree on that. I don't think it's a bad option for him to run on first down. It just depends on what you got dialed up on second down. Are you taking into account because he's not going to go backwards. What's your 2nd and 8 play? What's your 2nd and 7 play? You know what I mean? What's your 2nd and mid range? You know, I'm very curious about that. Um, Jordan Peterson's advice. He says, "I've never seen a slant by the Bills. They don't really run slants. They run more
No.
drags. They,
Right.
they do run more drags, and they do run a lot of crossing routes with the inside receivers. But you got to say those are long developing routes. Those are long developing rub routes in the middle of the field to try to generate some confusion. And I
Well, yeah,
understand that.
and let's talk about that real quick, right? Because a lot of people say, well, let's do what the Patriots do. And while the Patriots do run a lot of drag routes,
Yeah.
they're normally in tighter bunch situations, right? They're way more aggressive in those picks across the field than the Bills ever will be. And I don't know if that's McDermott, saying, no, we're going to play football by the rules, right? But it's the route concepts are kind of similar, but the Bills just simply aren't aggressive like that when they run pass plays.
Well, I haven't seen too many of the crossing routes where they try to do those rub plays where they'll abandon it and just sit down in his zone. I haven't seen those. I've only seen the tight end do it, and I've seen Beasley do it, but Beasley will do it on the outside. He doesn't really do it in the middle of the field. He did it in the beginning of the year. The Jets and Giants games, I definitely saw him settle in the middle of the field, but which is one thing I wanted to get through before we get right back to the chat. The message. Bean and McDermott are very good on messages and know how certain messages can affect a locker room. So let me ask you this, and I'll ask the chat as well. Do you think that it was A, there were just too high of asking prices for certain guys that they may have wanted? Or is it B, do you think that they have enough pieces to make a significant run this year? Or is it C, where they could have made a play for a player, but didn't want to disrupt the locker room?
So culture's a big thing, right?
It's huge for them.
Yeah, culture's a major pawn for them that they like to push around the board. It's a big piece. It's a big thing. So I'm going to reference the Trent Williams situation,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Kind of the headache that comes with that. So let's talk about Trent Williams real fast, and then I'll get to kind of where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
So Trent Williams officially reported the Redskins yesterday. Now, the Redskins failed him on his physical. The reason the Redskins failed him on his physical was because he showed up and said, my head hurts because this helmet is a problem. This helmet hurts the injury that I had, that I got while playing for you. So fail me on my physical if you want. Right. So what Washington was kind of doing was they were hoping Trent Williams wasn't going to show up, because Trent Williams, again, in the offseason would still have 2 years left on his deal. He showed up. Now the clock starts ticking on this year. The Redskins had more leverage to trade him when he had 2 years on his contract, not when he had 1 year on his contract, right? So by him showing up, this year is now rolling. Whatever they do with him is what they do with him, right? But he can't be moved anywhere.
Yep.
Now, Washington had a problem where they were getting deals for Trent Williams, but they never wanted to pull the trigger when the other team was ready to pull the trigger, right? They were getting offers of first and second round players for Trent Williams, but they just said, no, we're just going to wait. And then by the time that they were ready to move, the teams that were making those offers weren't ready. Now, were the Bills part of that? I don't know. I would imagine Brandon Beane is an inquisitive guy and would pick up the phone and find out. But I also know that Beane appreciates long-term assets way more than short-term assets. So with that being said, Beane ever being a player in the trade market is a surprise to me. Right? If it's not involving draft picks, sure. If it's not on draft day, I get a little tentative because he loves that draft currency so much. So I don't think there was anybody out there that was going to be a game changer for the Bills. You could say AJ Green, but he hasn't played this year. You could say Trent Williams. He hasn't played this year. Mohamed Sanu wasn't going to do anything for you. Like, were there other pieces that were out there? Yeah, maybe. But the long-term view by Beane, he's just never going to give up future assets for anything like that. You'll see him trade players for picks, not the other way around.
Yeah, he'll definitely do, as he's done at the beginning of the season with Wyatt Teller and Zay Jones. He's already done that this year. He loves those draft picks because in his mind, this is just my perspective. In his mind, if you have 2 5th round picks, you actually have a 4th rounder. because during
Right.
draft day you could flip both of those. The guys will take volume at that point of the draft. Now, could you trade 2/3 for a second? That's two
Mm-hmm.
starters. You know, if
Mm-hmm.
there's a guy that you really want, as in a Cody Ford, I can't remember what they gave up for Ford. I'm sure somebody in the chat will know what they got for Ford. But do they think they have the pieces right now? Because the Trent Williams is a very dramatic one. I know you just want to spend a couple minutes on it, Paul, but it's a very dramatic one because he would be replacing a captain.
Yeah.
So that's probably the extreme case. And Chuck Christopher, let me scroll up. He said Patriots screwed up the whole trade deadline with the second rounder for Sanu, overpaid, and then everyone had inflated compensation. That's not out of the realm of possibility for Belichick to do. Give up a second rounder for Mohamed Sanu, knowing that they're going to be getting rid of Gordon at some
Mm-hmm.
point. So it's a. I thought that immediately, and you told me that I was wearing my tin hat at that point when they gave up the second round. I'm like, did they just mess up the market for everybody? Now AJ Green and Julio Jones and all those guys. Like, I know we
Mm-hmm.
have talked about it quite a bit as far as the Julio scenario is. It's almost like Atlanta can't trade Julio, and they couldn't because of his
No.
contract. It was
Yeah.
the dead money
Exactly.
they would absorb and how much he would
Sure.
want. It's they can't do it. They're married to
Yeah.
him for the rest of his
Right.
deal. Um,
Agreed. Agreed. And that's the thing, like with Von Miller, same thing. Like the amount of money that's tied to Von Miller and the length of the deal. Atlanta couldn't afford to trade Julio Jones. Like they physically didn't have the money in order to do it. They would have had to cut players in order to just trade Julio Jones, which makes no sense, but that's the salary cap
yeah,
world that you live in. And somebody like Von Miller, no team's going to take on that contract. Von Miller is worth that to the Broncos. He's not worth his contract to another team. And to answer your question about Cody Ford, the Bills gave up a 5th-round pick to move up 2 spots with the
gotcha.
Raiders.
All right,
So,
two spots though. I mean, yeah,
yeah,
I thought it
yeah,
wasn't them going into the round that they weren't already in.
right.
Elliot Eisler, he brings up a great point. He says going into this offseason, just like last year, you have $90 million in cap, 9 or 10 picks heading into a solid draft class. Depending on where the Bills draft, 9 or 10 picks usually gets you in the range of 10 to 12 million. So if you have a
Mm-hmm.
$90 million cap going into next season, you got to think it's roughly around 78 based on what they do. Plus, they have a lot of free agents that they have to sign. You got
Mm-hmm.
Hyde, Poyer, Dawkins, Milano. You could discuss signing Trey White, but you can also exercise the 5th-year option on him. If Dawkins is in your long-term plans, which he seems to be, Hyde and Poyer's contract are staggered, so one's going to be a free agent next year, the next one in 2021. However, at the end of 2020, you're going to have the new collective bargaining agreement will be discussed. So a lot of these guys are kind of hesitant on signing really long-term deals with anybody, especially players that are nearing 30. They're only going into 2 to 3 range. But you got guys like Jordan Phillips, Gore. If he at some point you got to give the keys to Singletary. I understand that. So the way that the Bean had set it up, he likes volume over. He wants to get guys that are projects that you can quote unquote coach up, and that's basically how he's run his franchise. I was surprised, if we can get to it now, is the McDermott quote.
Yeah, that was surprising, right?
Does anyone
That was
have
a
it
little
verbatim?
frustrating.
Was
That
it?
was a little frustration.
Yes.
So yeah, that was a little frustration. So a little context around that quote, because it's
Because
fascinating, right? Because McDermott hasn't really been here long enough to be able to tell us all the mistakes that the organization has made in the past, but he certainly spoke like he had been, right?
yeah,
Um, and I'll pull up the exact quote just so that way we have it. But
because the
um,
one draft that he had was without Bean, and that was the Trey White draft. And Zay
right,
Jones was his second pick he ever did.
right. Yeah. It's in, I think what ended up happening was he was speaking about, trying to, because we all know being a McDermott primarily, he does not like to admit when he's wrong about a player.
No,
That is just never going to happen. He's not going to admit that he's wrong about a player. He's going to give them every chance to succeed or every chance to fail, however you want to see it, right? But the quote was, I actually have a little trouble trying to find it for some reason.
I
Uh,
think I have it actually.
Wasn't that the picture from? Isn't that the picture of this episode?
Yeah, I put it up there because I definitely wanted to talk about it. I thought McDermott was talking about me in my 20s. This organization has made some poor decisions in the past. Yes, I have made some very poor decisions in the past. So,
Well, and at the trade deadline, right, you could become a prisoner to your future with some of the deals that you're trying to make to improve your team right now. You know, you could start giving away some of those future assets. And I just don't see the Bills in a position to wanting to do that. You know, I just don't see it. I see a lot of conversation about, and Derek Jeffords had actually brought it up about the Bills blitzing, right? The Bills don't blitz enough. And we've talked about Sean McDermott and his kind of philosophy across the scope of the defense. But now we're starting to see, because draft time is starting to roll. So those who are looking for the Bills to get better are starting to look into the draft. So a couple comments here. Cameron says, Chase Young, get us a new pass rusher. You know that if there's an elite pass rusher, Sean McDermott is not going to miss. He's not
Bills
going to
fan.
miss.
Bills fan put it in real quick. He said, Bills fan 7883 says, there have been way too many years of irresponsible decision making.
Yep.
Yep, my 20s. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Rico Ali says Chase Young as well. And then there was another one. Oh, gosh, let me find it. It'll only take me a second.
Thanks, Bills fan.
Bills fan 7883. Can you talk about Edmonds? Because everyone's blaming Starr, but it's not his fault. Edmonds is not a middle linebacker. And again, it kind of speaks to what the Bills like to do. They like to get the best athlete. Ed Oliver might not have been the best defensive tackle on the board, but it's who they thought was the best athlete that can play across that position, right? Matt Milano was the best athlete they felt could play at the linebacker position. Tremaine Edmonds is the same thing. You know, they're all about getting athletes into the position, and they'll figure out the rest later. So, you know, Sean McDermott, and we've talked about this before, like Jerry Hughes is still without a sack, right? We just gave him a 2-year contract extension, and here we are entering a kind of deep into the season for no Jerry Hughes sightings. Right. So is an edge pass rusher really something this team could have used at the trade deadline? And is it something to be concerned about?
McDermott and Frazier have dialed up a little bit of a hybrid of what McDermott liked to do and what Frazier was known for doing. And the fact that their defensive ends are edge setters, because if you look at how Murphy plays the position, will he get sacks? Yeah, he'll get sacks if he's able to beat a guy one-on-one, and that's the type of defense that they're going to run. But it's more of an edge setting guy to filter everything in, take up bodies, and let the linebackers clean up everything. I mean, that's why you looked at when McDermott was with the Eagles, the middle linebacker, and which they should have a lot more majority of the tackles. When you looked at Luke Kuechly, I mean, the guy made it like 200 tackles a year almost. You know, I mean, that's the kind of thing. And aside from Julius Peppers, who was an elite pass rusher, they didn't have a lot of sacks. I mean, you and I did a statistical breakdown of that. Is the fact that McDermott defenses do not have eye-popping stats for those edge rushers. It's like they'll all have 6 or 7 or 8 throughout the course of the year. They won't have 15, 17 sacks for one guy. And the reason for that is that you can't just key in on one player on that defense. It's a total team defense that they want to play. They say, listen, we're going to have 11 guys that play fundamentally better than you. And to your point about the athletes with Edmonds and Milano, they want to get guys that have things you can't coach so they can coach them into their system. That's basically how they roll. They listen, I can't teach this guy speed or instincts, but I could teach him all the things he needs to know to be successful in this defense. And for the most part, for the first 6 games that the Buffalo Bills had played, their defense was solid. Now, could you say that this is a wake-up call to the defense because they were actually playing against an offense that could scheme around their defense, and they didn't make very good adjustments? You could say that. But when the third or fourth play of the game, they run a straight run up the middle, and Edmonds did not move from his linebacker position, and he gets dragged for another 4 yards by the running back.
Yeah.
That is concerning. That is, number one, that's concerning. Number two, the fact that they were able to establish a solid run early in the game and then run play action behind that had Edmonds all confused. If you're thinking that Allen is the quarterback of the offense and Edmonds is the quarterback of the defense, the quarterback for the defense had a much worse day than Allen did on the offense. He had a horrible game. He just didn't play very well, and he was out of position quite a bit. Milano, I don't think he was 100% because there were some blocks that he just simply didn't take on. And now this is just raw watching the film, seeing what happened in the game when it's clearly a run play, and Milano and Edmonds are still 4 yards behind the defensive tackles. That's concerning for me. That means that they're confused about where they're supposed to be on that play,
Right.
and that allows it. Once you have that and you have a play action that works well, it's easier for those offensive linemen to double a tackle and then go to the second level and get a hat on Milano or Edmonds. And that was the problem during the game that I saw. That's why the runs were starting to break open so much, is because they were able to double and go second level. If you're not able to double and go second level, which the Bills weren't able to do, you're not able to run the ball. You're
Right.
not able to do anything. So, yeah, the one play that was so concerning for me, the one screen they tried to run to Singletary, they ran a jet to that side.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Why do you run a jet to the side you want to run the screen?
Yep.
I see there's like 5 plays like that a game that Dave will call, and I'm like, why are you doing that? I think I did a breakdown last week where he ran a jet to a place where he wanted to run the tight end into the flat. I'm like, why? The defensive end is going to hold on that jet, and then you ran the tight end right into the defensive end, and he covered him. I don't understand it. So, I mean, that's that old chestnut. You want to go back to the chat, see what we got in here?
Yeah, I'm just blowing you up in the chat right now. And there we go.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I'm here for you. What can I say? I'm here for you. Sorry. I do want to get a little bit towards the preview of the Redskins game, because that's really the most important thing, right? We're talking about everything that happened in the past. So let's kind of get moving forward to what I think is a matchup for the ages. Adrian Peterson at 34 years old, coming up with Frank Gore, who's 36. So combined, they are, let's see here, Ozzy Osbourne, he's 70. Ric Flair, 70. Samuel L. Jackson, Billy Joel. That's the combined age. If you were to add Frank Gore and Adrian Peterson together, that's what you get. Just fascinating to me that we're talking about a game in 2019 and the names Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore are still in it. They would have retired on Madden about 6 seasons ago.
Totally stole my line. I swear to God, I was going to say it.
That's true. That's true, though. So I know there's a lot going on in Washington right now. So Case Keenum doesn't look like he's going to clear concussion protocol. They're kind of moving forward with Dwayne Haskins as their quarterback for this week. The Bills, you have to be thrilled to hear that, right? Because the Redskins running back position is banged up. They drafted Bryce Love, who wasn't going to be able to play most of this season anyway. They lost Darius Geis because they play at FedEx Field. They still have Adrian Peterson, although he's 34 years old.
They lost. Paul?
They also have Chris Thompson.
Nope.
He's
Who else
just got back. What?
Who's your boy? Well, who's your boy with the Buffalo Bills pick that they traded to Washington?
Oh, yeah, Bryce Love.
Oh, you love.
Yeah, broke my heart. Broke my heart. My heart.
You have an infinity for him still.
I still do. I have him on several fantasy teams, even though I know he's not playing this year.
Those dynasty leagues.
That's right. Got to hold on to him.
But FedEx Field is trash. I would be surprised if some injuries came out of this game. Knock on wood, I hope there isn't. But that field is just atrocious. That field is worse than the old vet in Philly.
Yeah. You know what Dwayne Haskins reminds me of?
Oh, here we go.
Dwayne Haskins reminds me of the little I've seen him play this season. I just have flashbacks to Geno Smith's rookie season. There's a lot of similarities there. And the Bills dominated Geno Smith when he was with the Jets. I'm just seeing some similarities there. There's talk about Haskins not being super into learning all the plays, which is a big deal right now because he's got to start. And this is a road game. It's the Bills' third home game in a row. I don't really see too much of a problem, but I think Washington's defense is a little bit sneakier than a lot of people. I think a lot of people are willing to write off the Redskins because the offense is not good. Yeah. That defense is sneaky. They've got a pretty tough front four.
You got Greg Minuski over there calling the
right,
and he's no stranger. You got a guy that we talked about in the draft possibly coming in. Montez Sweat,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yep.
they got a defensive end at nose tackle. They got
Mm-hmm.
Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, Ryan
It's a
Kerrigan.
really athletic front. That's a
Yeah,
really athletic
Ryan
front.
Kerrigan has a will, all first round picks.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
it's not like you're going into a powder puff game against guys that aren't going to do anything.
Right.
But let me ask you this, Paul. And this is a question for the chat. I just want to sidestep the Redskins really quick,
Sure.
as we got like 15 minutes left. Do you think that the Bills expected to be in this position at 5-1 going into Philly? And if you do, if you did think that they expected to be 5-1, if their record was, let's say, 2-4, obviously not ideal. Do you think they would let Allen learn more on the fly? Then it just seems like the more they would win, the more like they would just kind of rein him in a little bit more and more every week. Be like, no, 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 okay, all right, don't do this, don't do that. Okay, okay,
Mhm.
okay, okay, okay. Just keep it close. Just keep it close.
Well,
You
I
know.
mean, I guess that's kind of where, like I go back in my mind and I think of the first game where they attempted like almost 20 passes in a row. And I just go, maybe that's why, right? Because a lot of those he was checking out of run plays, right? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's why, right?
Oh,
Because yeah, maybe that's it, right? Maybe not, right? That was 5 games ago, 6 games ago at this point. But that's just some of that, because football is a game of chess, right? It really is. In order to hit home runs, sometimes you need to set up plays. You need to run plays just because they're going to set up, your shot.
yeah.
That's what you're doing. You're setting up your shot. That's what you're trying to do. I haven't really felt that way with Dable's offense, like he's trying to set up the next shot. It just looks like he's managing to down and distance the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it's irritating, but you can win football games like that. But I'm almost curious if Allen, if they were going to give him a lot of responsibility this season, and as the first half of games have gone, they said, okay, we need to rein this back a little bit. We need to rein this back a bit, because I don't know if he's seeing the right things just yet.
Because I have said I've been a proponent of this, and this was even during the drought, because that's how long ago it was that I said this. Well, I was like, listen, I am fine with the Bills not making the playoffs an extra year or two if they're
Mm-hmm.
going to have sustained success over the next 10.
Right.
It seems that Bean has his finger on the pulse of something,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll get talent here and we'll flip the roster and do this. I'm not placing 100% of the blame on Dable. I'm not placing 100% of the blame on Allen. That is their guy. That's who they wanted. That's who they were going to go get. Due to the recent press conference of Baker Mayfield, it doesn't seem like that was their guy.
Yeah. Yeah. From a culture standpoint,
Yeah,
can you imagine what would happen if Baker Mayfield was in a Bills uniform and he walked out on a press conference
I think
because he
he'd
didn't
be.
like a question?
I think he'd be 250 by now because I think he would enjoy Buffalo to its fullest. I think he would. But that being said, I think that I would take a few lumps this season about Allen, having him learn. Put the ball in harm's way a few times, kid. Try to throw some guys that you think are covered that can make plays for you. Trust. That's the thing. You got to trust the guy that's giving you the play knows what's the best thing for you. And a lot of times he's back there, and I don't think he trusts it. And you can't have that. You can't have that at all. I know there's a lot of new pieces. I know they put a lot of different talented guys on the thing right now, but just take a few shots, man. Just do it. Just be a playmaker, because you know what? If you take a shot and it's incomplete or it's a pick, you learn. I'm not talking about taking a chance where you're rolling to your left and you throw it to a crossing T.J. Yeldon in the Titans game. That's not taking a shot to me.
Right.
Taking a shot is throwing a crossing route when Brown is covered, but you put it high enough to the outside where only he could get it,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nobody behind, there's no safety behind him, that if he tips it up in the air, gets picked. Just take a shot, kid. Just that's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing, okay, we're gonna do this, this, and this. We're gonna dot all our I's, cross all our T's, and this is what we're gonna do for the offense. And dotting I's and crossing T's are not producing results, and that's what's bothering
Well,
me.
there's one thing that I get a little hesitant about, and I think you'll understand, right? So I remember there being a very significant time as a Bills fan where I thought, oh my God, the receivers don't trust the quarterback anymore. Right. And the last time I could really say that was watching Robert Woods absolutely lose his mind because EJ Manuel was his quarterback. Right. Because Robert Woods would be open, or he would break a route and the pass would go behind him, or it would be thrown 3 feet short of him and there was nobody near him. Right. So there was a time where you looked at it, you're like, man, these receivers don't trust Manuel at all. Doesn't matter what he does. They don't trust the ball to be there on time. They don't trust the ball to be on target. There was a significant time of Bills history with EJ Manuel as a starting quarterback where you could actually see it while you watch the game. I don't see that with the receivers here in Buffalo yet.
They're
But
winning, Paul.
I know they're winning, but I am fearful that if Allen can't start having some fun while he's playing football, right, and start making some plays like we all know that he's capable of, I'm worried that time is going to come. You know what I mean? If he's not being himself out there and they're not able to use his strengths, I'm fearful that's going to happen.
Yeah, I just would like the kid to take a few more shots and Grendel release the Kraken.
That's right.
All right. Yeah, we got some great comments. Let me scroll up. Sanders had it. Kevin had a great comment. He says Dable beats him up if he does that, Mario. He does. He just,
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I really don't understand that. That sounds like a parent telling his kid to go run out on the ice, and then saying don't fall.
Right.
And the kid falls. You go, see, I told you not to fall. Like, I'm running on ice. You're not helping me here. I need some help.
Well, Kevin Barbados says Mario taking risks means having some bonehead plays.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
and I said that specifically. The one in the Titans game, that's a risk you don't have to take. You're rolling to your left, you're throwing across your body to Yeldon. That's a boneheaded play that you didn't have to. I'm talking about you see Foster breaking up the sideline, and you're like, let's try it. Let's try. You see Brown running an out route, and you're like, you know what? The linebacker's underneath this. The corner's over the top of this. It's a zone. It's not really open. But if I put it outside, only he can get it. Now, and then that would speak to an accuracy issue. But I've seen him make plays with his arm. That one he was rolling right, and I think he threw it to Sweeney. I think it was the Jet game.
Yep.
Dropped it right in there, right in front of the guy.
Beautiful pass. Beautiful pass. Well, and I think there's something to be said. Yeah, I just want to make this point kind of quickly. Thank you, Derek. Very much appreciated. Thank you, sir. I think there's a point to be made about when Isaiah McKenzie, because we've talked about Isaiah McKenzie and Andre Roberts kind of being the same player, right? The goal is to kind of use them in similar ways. Isaiah McKenzie not being in the game, I missed Isaiah McKenzie. Because they used him a lot in jet formations the week before. And I was like, okay, I get this, right? I get this. And then when he was inactive, I was like, okay, well, they're finally going to let Andre Roberts take that piece, those formation looks. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. I was like, Isaiah McKenzie's not out there. So that means Robert Foster's probably going to be a bit more involved. And he wasn't, right? So I guess that's where I get caught a little bit, because I expected to see more either Andre Roberts or more Robert Foster, and all I got was no Isaiah McKenzie, right? That's all I got out of that. We're just not going to have Isaiah McKenzie play today. And it didn't seem like anybody picked up his role in the offense.
Well, we had stated, more specifically you, I'm not taking credit for this one. You had stated, it's not a bad one, Paul. Believe me, it's not a bad one.
Oh, sure. Great.
When McKenzie, and even Sal Capaccio even said this, and I sent this to you in the morning, of the Miami game when he came back. And it was, McKenzie was in there to supplement the outside run game. So you run those jet sweeps in order to get him outside. Or you throw him the ball really quick off the line of scrimmage to supplement that run outside. Because you have Gore that's pounding inside the tackles. You didn't have Singletary there. All you have is T.J. Yeldon, who, when you compare him to Singletary as far as an outside runner, it's not the same. So you're using McKenzie in that role. Now when Singletary comes back, you think that, okay, your outside run game can pick up. You don't really need McKenzie. However, you didn't try to run outside, which You know what? Honestly, I don't blame him. You can't run outside on a wide nine. A wide
No.
nine defense, you can't run outside.
Right. And that's and
So,
we and you could say wide nine in Buffalo, and a lot of people go, "Oh yeah. I remember
that was
that one
Schwartz.
guy that we had a few years ago. It was Schwartz." Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
so deactivating McKenzie, I don't think was a bad move
Hmm.
because you have Singletary in there. If you're gonna have Singletary or McKenzie, now I think you may activate him against Washington and deactivate Lee Smith. That'd be my thing. But aside from that, I do want to go back to a comment that was made, and I told him I'd get to it
Oh, from Major?
from Major. Major had a very interesting comment.
I
Wait,
got you.
why can't I? Oh,
It's
I got it. Just curious of in your opinion. Do you think this offense would be more exciting, putting up points, if we had drafted Lamar Jackson? Can I go first on this one?
well, I do want to call out Everyday Flash. Thank you very much. And he did say, "I'm burning my Allen jersey if we lose to Haskins." I don't think that that's probably called for. That's fine. I don't think many people would be angry with you
No.
if we lose to Dwayne Haskins. But yeah, no, you go
Okay.
right ahead.
I'll say this: the thing that makes Lamar Jackson so explosive in what he's doing is that, number one, he's a phenomenal athlete, and he's so fast, he's so dynamic, and the thing that he's able to do. However, I think that's a result of his athleticism, but I think it's also a result of having Greg Roman as your offensive coordinator. Now, Greg Roman, if you guys want to go in the Wayback Machine, it's a name that's very familiar to Buffalo. However, he was back in San Francisco when Kaepernick was making all those moves and winning games over there. So he knows how to scheme an offense for a extremely athletic, extremely mobile quarterback. That's what he's doing in Baltimore now. However, if you would have given Lamar Jackson to Brian Dable, I don't know if that would have meshed as well. I don't think that would have been a recipe for success here in Buffalo. That's my opinion. I think the fact that Roman is there and you have Lamar Jackson, Roman's previous success that he had, even with Tyrod, he had some success with Tyrod.
Yep.
Um, I think we even wrote an article in the Wayback Machine on our website that it had him as like what you call it, like Kaepernick light or something.
Yeah,
When
that's
he was
right.
doing it. So that pairing, I think, in Baltimore is the reason why he's so successful and so explosive. I don't think if that same pairing came to Buffalo with Daboll and Jackson, I don't think it would be the same. I really don't think.
Well, I think there's a big difference because I actually had this thought early this morning. So I'm glad somebody asked that because I was thinking about this early this morning for whatever reason it came up. And Lamar Jackson, that again, offensive minded head coach versus defensive minded head coach, right? But they're not trying to reinvent Lamar Jackson,
No,
right? That's the thing that they're not doing. They're not telling him he needs to get better. They're saying, okay, well, you don't throw very good. So we're just going to kind of cover that up as best we can. Right. And he's going to break the record for rookie rushing at the quarterback
he
position.
will. Yeah,
It's going to happen. Just as
barring
long as
injury, he
he's
will.
healthy.
Yeah.
Right. As long as he can stay healthy. But they're not trying to reinvent the wheel with him. Right. They're saying these are your strengths. We're just going to use that until somebody figures out how to stop it. And that's kind of what we haven't really had with Josh Allen. It's always been, well, we need to develop. We need to work on him. We need to develop him, as opposed to, okay, here's what you do really, really well. So let's just use that to our advantage. And I think they've had flashes of that. But again, you see Josh is still kind of green in that respect, and all the fumbles are a problem because he's had a fumble issue the entire season. If you followed hashtag sports at all, you would know that we've talked about his fumbles at least once a week since the like second week of the season. It's been a
Yes.
problem. Um, but I don't know. And I see Cameron ask the question, what does Allen do well? Well, he could throw a football over the mountains, and they're not letting him do that right now. Right. So I think there's some things that you can do with Allen that they're not doing that play to his strengths. However, you do need to be careful of Allen, the athlete with the football, because Allen, the athlete with the football, is kind of careless. Right. That
Yeah.
you just have to be careful there.
Yeah. I think that Allen is more of he's an improv guy, and you're trying to put him in a suit and tie. You know what I mean? Back in the day, it was it probably would have been the comparison would have been the in the Attitude Era. You got Stone Cold Steve Austin and Brian Dable as Vince McMahon trying to put a suit and tie on him and be the corporate guy, and that's just not what can happen. That's just not the way it is. Now, as far as Dable goes, I will say, and I've told you this many times, Paul. I mean, there are plays he draws up that I like. There are some concepts that he likes, and it's almost like you have to pick your poison very carefully with it, because I'll say some stuff. I'll be like, listen, Allen missed this guy who was wide open. Well, and if it's not a breakdown it's not really a breakdown by the defense that's happening. It's that guy was schemed open and Allen did not throw it. Why did Allen not throw it? Now, if he hits 2, 3, 4 of those a game, because those are there, those 2, 3, 4 are there. It may be a different complexion of the game, but just when certain times when they're behind schedule, which isn't ideal, I understand. There are ways that he can't dig himself out of a hole. I like, for the most part, I like Dable's play calling if it's 3 or less. Getting to that 3 or less is the problem. Because if you look at the first 2 games where they were able to move the ball well, that's what it was. They were in very manageable second and third down scenarios. So unless that happens, I don't know what else to say in that respect. So are we running up on the end of the stream here, Paul? Are we almost?
I think we're pretty much there. Paul Berg brings up a great point. You can't win if you only run.
No, you can't.
All times.
No,
I completely agree with that. Yeah, I think you have to remove Josh Allen runs from the rushing statistics. I understand that some of those are planned runs, but the Bills got behind schedule with Philly. So I don't think that's a fair test for the Bills need to run the football more. But one thing I wouldn't want to do is try and run it against the Redskins. They're actually quite good against the run. As far as points against, they've allowed more points than the Bills have scored on average per game. So that normally tells you that that'll play to the Bills' advantage, right? Because the Redskins have let up 24.4 points a game. I think the Bills are at let me see, points for, I think the Bills are, oh gosh, where are they? I think they're at 18 points a game. It's just barely over 2 touchdowns. I have it right here.
Dave-O loves Wild Wings.
Oh God. That's terrible. No, it's like saying your favorite restaurant's Applebee's.
Oh God, how dare you? Kevin, our next show, I have an announcement for that. I have actually a special announcement. I talked with Paul about it, and Mario and Paul are drinking the Berg Aid, not the Kool-Aid, the Berg Aid. Fat guys aren't good play callers. No, you figure they want to run the ball all the time.
Sure.
You were looking up a stat, Paul? Are you almost done? Or?
Yeah. So the Bills are at 19 points per game. Yeah, and the Redskins have allowed 24 points per game. But again, that front's pretty nasty. Running the football against Washington is going to be pretty tough. That's a pretty tall order.
But we've seen them play against. I mean, the Titans game was the one game where Allen, you could say, played very well, and their starting 3 secondary guys had over a 72% completion percentage against them. So he took advantage of that.
Yep.
Against the Eagles, they had a very high percentage of passes completed on their secondary, and it just didn't happen. Right. So you could say it's scheme, you could say it's missing guys, you could say a bunch of things. But like I said, we're coming to the end of the stream. The one thing I wanted to say, I'm really putting myself out there, and it's something that I haven't seen. I haven't seen it done. I haven't seen anyone try it, at least. But our next stream is going to be Friday. So we have the Friday film room. I'll usually break down what had happened in the game, in the Eagles game more specifically, and I'll take 4 or 5 plays. And I already have a couple ones that are compared to very previous games that I wanted to go over. However, instead of that just being an episode that I'm going to film for you guys and you guys could comment and do whatever you want on it, I am opening the floor for any person of Hashtag Nation, just like tonight, and we're going to have a stream. Okay? We're going to have a stream. We will go over whatever plays you guys want to go over. And we'll watch the plays that you guys want to watch. All right? And you could comment on anything that's going on. Like, Mario, I'm curious about this on this play. Well, I'll try to explain it to the best of my knowledge of my 30 years of watching this game and coaching and playing this game. I will try it my best. But it's going to go live. We're going to do it live.
Now, there's a reason why nobody does this, and it might be because this could go very poorly.
Yeah, but I'm willing to put myself out. Exactly. I'm willing to put myself out there for the nation. So if there's certain plays you want to see that we can break down together, I've watched up until the third quarter tomorrow I'm going to watch the rest of the game. I'm going to take some notes on specific plays that I think you guys might want to see. But if there's something in a play, you say, Mario, can you explain this? I will try my darndest to do it for you guys, and we're going to go live on it. Paul's right. It could go horribly bad. But for you guys, I want you guys to be in the film room with me when I go over certain plays and see what I'm seeing. Because there's some things that I cut out and some things that I think aren't necessary for certain plays, but you're going to get the full like game breakdown from me. So it'll be Friday at 10 o'clock p.m. I'll be going live. I'll have the Eagles game up. You won't see my face, but you'll hear my voice. So it's probably best for everyone. But we're going to go over the game. So any specific plays, any specific formations, line adjustments, anything like that, coverages, I'll try to give you my best on Friday, and you guys can come and join us. So
what time are you thinking?
10 p.m.
Okay.
So
Eastern Standard.
Eastern Standard Time. So the Friday film room will be at 10. We'll go as long as we need because I don't work Saturday. So
yeah, we got Sportscaster at 8 a.m.
We do. And I'm very curious to see how it goes. If it's a dumpster fire, then it's a dumpster fire. If it works out well, it works out well. But we're still going to have the Friday film room, and you guys can come in and see kind of in it. And it's not to be like egotistical at all or anything. It's just that I'm going to show you what I've seen and how I watch the film. So maybe you guys could see the same thing that I'm seeing when it comes to some of these plays. So, yeah, that's it. That's it for tonight. Paul is very happy that you guys decided to join us tonight at 10 p.m. This is going to be the regular schedule for us for the regular season days. So everything that goes on Wednesdays at 10 p.m., we're going to have a live stream. We're going to have our post game on Sundays. Joe from Believers Talk will be calling the game on Sportscaster and on his YouTube channel as well. Be sure to go over there and give him a sub. We'll have the Friday film room and our Wednesday live sessions. It's just because, like and Paul said too, things happen so fast within the season. If we cut an episode on Sunday and then it might be irrelevant by Tuesday when we were going to release it. So we just want to make sure that we're staying as up to date with you guys as we can.
Yeah, it's tough when we're in episodes. We don't know injuries or anything like that. So we kind of have to tread water a little bit with some of the conversations. Just better for you guys if we just do it on Wednesdays. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah. So guys, Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern, come join me in the film room live with your questions and comments, whatever you want. So, for Paul, I'm Mario. We're Hashtag Nation. We're Hashtag Sports. You're Hashtag Nation. Thanks for joining us tonight, guys. We're out.
Swing and a miss.